Hey everyone, welcome again to Novelists Unwind. I'm really excited to be here today with Lindsey Brackett, who writes Southern fiction. Her debut novel just released, it's Still Waters. Beautiful, beautiful cover. This is a terrific book. I was so honored to get an advanced copy and be able to read it and write an endorsement for Lindsey. And I will tell you that I said in my endorsement, it's one of my favorite contemporary novels, and I do not say that lightly. It truly is one of those stories that, you know, I wanted to get to the end, but I didn't want it to end. And I was reading it on my Kindle, and it was one of those moments. I've had a couple of those recently where, you know, I went to flip the page and there were no more pages.
Everyone says that to me, Johnnie. They're like, I got to the end, and why was that the end? I mean, I thought I tied it up, but apparently people...
No, but you did, because, you know, but it's like, I did that, and it's like, oh, it's over, you know, the little tears are welling up, that kind of thing. But it's, it ended perfectly. It's like, yeah, you know, because I thought about it. It's like I had to think about this and said, you know what? No, it ended exactly where it needed to end. But before, you know, we shouldn't be talking about the ending. Let's talk about the book.
Talk about the beginning.
Yeah, but yeah, read Still Waters. Tell us about your a little bit about your writing journey, and then how you came to write such a fantastic debut novel.
Well, I have always wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a writer, and like Laura Ingalls. But I have a self-confidence issue. And
No.
I know, so many writers. And so I didn't really ever feel like that was something I could pursue. Like I didn't even major in English in college. I was going to be a teacher, and I always kind of thought, okay, well, I'll teach for a while, and then maybe eventually I might write a book. I love books. I'm just going to, you know, get there somehow, which tends to be my like life mantra. It's not the best. And so I have always had this gem of an idea. You know, my grandmother, the grandmother in the story, Nan, is modeled after my own maternal grandmother, and she passed away quite suddenly, actually, at Christmas, the year that I was 10 years old. And
oh, wow.
And so I just knew I wanted to write a story where there was a like, what if she had lived? Like, what if things had been different? And so I kind of wanted to explore that idea. And my family grew up as children. There are a lot of us, but my mother and her sister and her brother always took us. We always met at Edisto Beach every summer because they were from Walterboro, which is this little town. It's about 45 minutes from Edisto Beach. It's really the last it's the last Walmart before you get to the last place you can go to Walmart. And so, I know. Yep. And so they grew up in Walterboro, and Edisto was a part of their heritage and their childhood. And they still have friends who live there who regularly go to the beach there. I'm actually going next month, and the lady who's interviewing me for the newspaper, my aunt was in her wedding. Like they were best friends.
Oh, how cool.
So it's very cool. There's a lot of family connections there. But I just knew I wanted to set a story there. And so I fiddled around with this idea for a long time, kind of just the gem of it, and I would go away from it and come back to it and go away from it and come back to it. And in 2014, my grandfather passed away in January. Not my maternal grandfather. He actually passed much earlier, but my father's father passed away. And I had always told him I was going to write a book. And it was kind of like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I need to do this. He never got to see it. And if I don't do it now, then who else is not going to get to see it? And so I picked up this like old manuscript, and I had maybe 30 pages. And honestly, the only scene from that original manuscript that is still in the book is when she meets Tennessee for the first time.
Wow.
Everything else was changed. And so I picked it up and I started writing, and I went to Blue Ridge Christian Writers Conference for the first time. I met Eva Marie Everson. She was the first person whoever told me I was talented at this, who wasn't related to me, who didn't know me, who didn't have any
sure
in me other than words on a page. I showed her a scene that I was working on, and that scene actually is still in the novel. It's the scene where they sit on the back porch after Nan's big secret is revealed. And I'll never forget her talking about, there's this one line that she said just made her feel like it was good Southern fiction. And I talk about how the condensation on the tea glass looked like tears. And I just never forgot her saying that to me. And so I took her suggestions and I finished it and I polished it and I submitted it, and Lighthouse acquired it in November of 2015. Like super long. Oh, now I hear the lawnmower. It was a super long process, and it just I don't wait patiently. So I feel like the Lord called me to be a writer because He gave me 4 kids and made me a writer so I would learn patience. And clearly, but it was just, the story is one of those like super close to my heart. Like it's like there's going to be almost that kind of feels like, is this really what I wanted my first novel to be? Is like this story that's about my family, and it's very deeply rooted. And even though like what happens in the story didn't happen to us, it's still embedded with family history and family traits. Like my sister called me yesterday and she kind of fussed at me a little bit because she was like, a heads up would have been nice. Like there's a scene that made her cry, and she was like, and I did draw on a real life experience for that. And she was like, you could have told me this was coming. But for that reason, I didn't let any of my family read it. Like they didn't read it until it came
until it was done.
Yeah. And my mom actually won't, she's probably going to watch this video, but
sorry, Mom.
doesn't like to talk about it. She told me that it was excellent. She went through and found all my typos. Thanks, Mom.
Of course.
Yeah. And but she doesn't want to talk about it. She says it reminds her too much of her mother, which is, in it really the greatest compliment, because
wow.
I wanted to get Edisto right, and I wanted to get that grandmother right. And so I guess.
Well, I think, that to me was something that just made the story so compelling, was because it was so rooted in details and without being bogged down in details.
Jennifer Slattery to thank for that. She's my editor.
Oh, really? Yeah, because it's so easy to it's so easy to just want to tell all these things, and then it bogs the story down, and yet you want those deep roots. But I knew, I said, Lindsey's been to this place. She knows this. She's, it was just so terrific to feel like I was a part of vacationing at this beach and with these people, and it, just so much of a sense of history and a sense of place there. So I thought that was fantastic.
That was definitely one of my goals. Like Edisto, and Edisto is a character in the novel.
Yes, absolutely it is. And that whole beach culture, which, that's not my thing, because I grew up on a farm in the Midwest. So, so it's also it's a different thing. So it's very fun to read about, and kind of wanted, it's like, oh my gosh, this would have been a fun way to grow up. Is that?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
It's just, and I think it's no matter whether you're, beach or Midwest or farm or city or whatever, that sense of homecoming, that
exactly
you go to. And I personally did not grow up there. I mean, they raised us here in North Georgia. But I was back on Edisto a couple of years ago, bicycling around one morning and taking some notes for the story. And this woman was watering her garden, and I'm like, stopping to talk to her, and she asked me some questions, and I told her I was writing a book about the island, and she kind of asked me why, and I told her, and I said, my grandparents, they lived in Colleton County, they were farmers, and she was like, oh, well, so you're a local, like, I'm local, because
so you are a local anyway.
It's that sense of you belong here.
Yeah.
And that's a very Southern thing, I think. That very like where your people come from. That's
exactly. That even creeps up to Ohio, which isn't, of course, considered part of the South, but those sensibilities are still part of my roots too, and especially my family came from Southern Ohio, which it's all that. It's that same thing. It's like, where do people come from, and who you are, and
yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I read, actually, Johnnie, when I read Where She Belongs, the themes reminded me a lot of Still Waters.
Really?
Just because of that sense of coming back home,
mm-hmm.
and kind of reclaiming this place that maybe you didn't ever think you would be.
Yeah.
Can I belong here? Can I live here? Can I make a life for myself here? So.
Yeah. And going back to those roots and that heritage, and yeah. Well, thanks for shouting out Where She Belongs, one of my novels.
I love that book.
I appreciate that. Oh, goodness. Well, and I wanted to ask you about Tennessee's name, because I thought that was so cool. So how did your male hero get the name Tennessee?
Okay, so there's two things. The first is that when I was teaching middle school, and I started like the gem of this novel in 2007,
mm-hmm.
like I really started writing scenes. And that was the height of the Twilight craze. And all of my students, all my girls, not the boys, the girls, Miss Brackett, you have to read Twilight with us. So listen, if a 12-year-old girl asks you to read a book with her, you read the book with her.
That's right.
Yes. So I read, we were all very into the Twilight. And so, but, I did a little research on Stephenie Meyer, and she wrote this book as a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids. And I just kind of thought, okay, listen, if she can do this, so can I. And so, that was kind of like a good kick in the butt for me. It didn't last very long, since it took me forever to actually finish. But I was teaching middle school. I was, my kids knew I wanted to be a writer. Like, they knew that Miss Brackett was their teacher who wanted to be a writer someday. And so I started, I always tried to teach them, like I always tried to use great stories in class. And we had this one short story that we would read every Valentine's Day, and it was called Kissing Tennessee. And it was cute and sweet, and just one of those great short stories that's like so layered with detail, and yet it's very impactful.
Uh-huh.
So it's about these kids, and his name is Tennessee, and I couldn't tell you what her name is. And I can't. And it's all about like when they were 6 and he kissed her at the ball field after they won the T-ball game, and then they were like 10 or something. No, they were 6 and he kissed her on the playground, and they were 10 and he kissed her at the ball field after they won the ball game, and then when they were 14, he took her to the Starlight Dance.
Oh my God.
And so, middle schoolers love this kind of stuff. They eat it.
Yeah.
And so, but his name was Tennessee, and I just thought it was so, I don't know, it's just so sweet, and like it conjures up that story for me. And I really need to look up it's in a collection of short stories, and I need to look up the author's name, because I reference it now all the time. People ask me this question all the time, how he got his name.
Yeah, because now I want to read that story.
It's a great, sweet story. And so, but that's how. And then when I started really like sort of throughout the writing process, when I was really trying to not just pick names I liked because I liked the sound of them, when I was really trying to make names that fit the Low Country, that fit the setting, that fit the Southern feel, I kept the Tennessee also because it gave me an excuse to give his mother a good bit of backstory. Like, she actually grew up in Tennessee, and wound up on Edisto. Like, so now I've got this backstory I can work with for the next book. And also, Tennessee is the place where the rivers converge.
Oh.
So it was a nice symbolic, metaphorical.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where you don't put that in the book. Like, I didn't put that in the book. But if somebody ever stumbled across it, I would hope they would think that I was actually.
That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
with the whole Still Waters. Yeah.
So I apparently have a thing for water. I have another work in progress that's not related to Edisto at all, but it's working titled Poplar Creek, and there's a creek.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Oh, I like that.
So, but that's fine.
I know it took a long time, starting the story in 2007, and here it's 10 years later, but I want you to know that I started Where She Belongs as a NaNoWriMo novel in 2005.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't even my debut novel. I wrote a historical that actually was my first published novel.
Right.
But like you, I just kept going back to it because it was so important to me, because it is my childhood. I mean, it's grounded in that. But sometimes these stories just take a long time to So it took about 11 years, I guess, before it came out.
And I think now, looking back on it now, the things that happened since then, I wouldn't have been able to write the story that it is.
Exactly.
I hadn't experienced my grandfather's dying and going back to Edisto as a mother with my children and then seeing it through their eyes.
Oh, that's sweet.
There's a bit of that in there. And then also during the course of writing it and finishing it, she's 7 now, but at the time she was 4, my daughter Amelia got very, very sick. She has a neurological condition. And she's okay now. Like it's kind of a thing we monitor at the moment.
Right.
But at the time they couldn't really tell us what was wrong with her. And they were tossing out a lot of really scary words.
That's frightening.
There was when the doctor finally said, I'm taking her to the board of oncologists. We really need to rule out if this is a tumor. And they had already talked about how deep it was and how it was probably not surgical and all these different things because they couldn't really determine what was going on with her. And in my mind, in mine and my husband's minds, it was kind of like, they're going to tell us her daughter's dying. Yeah. They're going to tell us that she's inoperable and that she's dying. And all that child loved in the world, the thing she loved the most in the world is Edisto Beach and this specific house that we've stayed at. And like, I had a plan. Like if they came back to me and told me that was what it was going to be, then we were selling everything and we were going to
that's where you were going to go.
Yeah, that's where we were going to go. And there's kind of in my mind, like I have that kind of as a gem of a story. Like what would what if that had really been the case? But it made my novel richer to be writing from those experiences.
Those emotions, yeah.
Right. And it would have been 10 years ago. So in some ways I'm very grateful it took a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so true because we may not experience exactly what our characters do, but you can draw on similar things or just those moments of being really, I don't know, just real like that. I mean, that's a scary, scary thing for a parent to feel. And
the feeling of being out of control, which I think characters, like she seeks to maintain this control because when she was a kid, everything was out of her control.
Right.
When I was an adult, I'm going to control it all.
I absolutely. I'm going to hold on to it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's big. And certainly, I know. I mean, this novel definitely has emotional depth to it, and so yeah, there you go.
Keep getting told that too.
Yeah.
I've seen people. They look at the cover and they think, oh, it's like a sweet beach romance.
There we go.
There's sweetness. There's romance.
There is.
But I just there's more. There's more
to that. Absolutely. Yeah, this girl's journey. It's very compelling. Okay, and beyond that, you write regularly as a columnist and you blog. And I loved what I read on your website. You were trying to put yourself in a box, and the word God whispered to you. And I thought, you know what? I'm still trying. I read that and I thought, God, I've been asking you. So when are you going to whisper in my ear for my whatever? He's like trying to put myself in a box. Yeah. But this whole thing, I mean, it's hard with the branding, and I don't know, readers watching this, if we really have to work at finding those words that distill all that we do into just a simple little tagline, and how hard that can be. But God whispered to Lindsey.
I was a sleep-deprived mother. He talks to sleep-deprived mamas in the middle of the night.
He does, doesn't he? So tell us what God whispered to you and how that just, I don't think that did, I think that did, we don't want to put ourselves in boxes. And I think that God said, no, you're not going to be in a box. Here's this. So tell us about it.
Well, a couple years ago when I was trying to rebrand my blog, and I started as a mom blogger, like that was the first time I ever let anybody read anything I was writing. So blogging was really good to me in that, not because I have huge numbers, because I don't, but it was good for me because people were reading it and they were responding and they were telling me that I could write. So that was, words of affirmation is my love language. Yes. Keep that in mind when you leave an Amazon review, please. I'm just
5 stars.
yeah. Or the 4 is okay.
Four's good.
So, but the blog was originally like, I called it Random Acts of Brackett because I just wanted to write about whatever I wanted to write about. And then I transitioned it over to my name and I called it Random Acts of Motherhood and Everyday Grace, because I still was writing a lot about the throes of motherhood. I quit teaching after 8 years to stay home. And at the time we had 3 girls and Amelia was only 1.5. And immediately we found out I was pregnant. That was not in my plan. I have issues, y'all. Hashtag control issues. And so, but so I got to be home. I've been home now. This is my 6th year being at home. And so for 5 of those years, now they're all in school. It's amazing. But for 5 of those years, I was that full-time stay-at-home mom, always with a small child in the house. And so I wrote a lot about that. But then I started writing about like just my community and the things I was experiencing as a community and things that were, and it just kind of became this like, what am I writing about? What's my brand? I hate, that branding. Difficult. And I started looking back at what I was doing, especially for the newspaper. I write a 500-word column for my local newspaper. It's in 2, right? It's syndicated because it's in 2 papers. It wasn't an online magazine, but they folded. But unfortunately, and so I was writing this column, and it was kind of like, what am I really writing about?
Right.
And when I'm doing my fiction work, because at the time I had started working for Splickety, and so I was doing a good bit of flash fiction, and I realized that I was just writing about life. Like I was and not to say that in this like cliche catch-all kind of way, but I was taking these moments of everyday life and trying to pull out like some sort of meaning to them. And so, the tagline that God gave me, that just right life, is, it's kind of a play on words, because I desperately always, like, I just always strive. I'm always forever striving for like contentment. Like, I want to be content with what He's called me to do, with what He's given me, with whether it's a small publishing house or a big publishing house, or a small contract or a big contract, or a small house or a big house, or whatever. Like, I want to be content, and I struggle with that. I have that very like idealistic nature. Listen, shout out right now, I'm reading Anne Bogle's Reading People, and learning a few things about myself that I thought I knew, but now I'm like really learning them. And then, yeah. So I have that tendency to like, I build up these huge ideas and ideals, and then when they don't quite go my way, I get very disappointed.
Yeah.
So I really, striving that writing life, literally like WRITE, and then also just having that right life, like just being content with the life that God has called me to. And if that's a small life in a small town where the bulk of my impact is with that 500-word newspaper column, that's still amazing. It's still awesome.
It's great.
So
yes.
So it was, it was a lot of that. And I have found now that I've stopped trying to distill it down, that it's naturally distilling itself. I write a good bit about like faith and everyday life, what it really looks like to be like on mission for Jesus without saying I'm on mission for Jesus.
Sure.
And I write a lot about, obviously what my motherhood journey still. What I'm learning from that. And then I do have like an obsession with small towns and roots and what grounds people to a place. And the older I get, the more like kind of nostalgic I get.
Yes.
That small town upbringing. I love raising my kids in a small town, but I grew up in a very small town, and I kind of hated it. And so now that it's all about, I'm getting out of here and I'm not coming back. And now I go back, and these people back home, like I'm going tomorrow, Friday, I'm going to do a little book delivery, because so many people back home want the book and they want it signed and they want it hand delivered. And
that's wonderful.
And it's sweet. And it's not demanding, because it's like, they're my people.
Exactly.
Like that's where I grew up. They raised me. And I tell them that a lot, like you can run away from this place. Like, I'm getting out of here. Small town. And it's kind of like, you can run away from this place all you want, but this place raised you.
Yeah.
Like,
And you
who
just
you are at 18
want
when you
that.
leave here is strongly defined by the life you had while you were here. And I think we, as teenagers, are quick to dismiss that. And then we become adults and we begin raising our own kids, and we kind of look back on it and it's kind of like, oh.
Yeah. That's
So,
what I want.
yeah. So I write a lot about, that, the good and the bad.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, it was so perfect. I thought, oh my gosh, that is just such a it's really nice. And it does give you a lot of scope to write about a lot of different things. So it's like, so to me, again, it was just like, you, how do I put myself in a box? And I think God whispered words that just completely take, let you be.
And I don't box well.
No, I don't think a lot of us do. You mentioned Splickety, so just real quick, Splickety magazine is flash fiction, and there are several different imprints. So readers may want to look into that if you like reading really short stories. Tell us just a tiny bit about Splickety and some of the things readers might find there.
Okay, so I came on board with Splickety actually because of Johnny's daughter, Bethany.
That's right. That's the truth.
All the connections there. And I spent about 2.5 years as the editor of web content there for Splickety.com. I'm not actually doing that anymore.
Oh, aren't you? Okay.
I've kind of transitioned out of that role. I'm still with the company in a very, like I've said to Ben, I want to stay on the email and just ask questions, and I'll write some guest posts kind of thing. Like it's very, I don't really have a job title, kind of thing, but Splickety is flash fiction, and it's short fiction, which is less than 1,000 words. But I will tell you, I genuinely believe if you are a new writer starting out, that writing flash fiction is probably the absolute best thing you can do. Flash fiction is you can write a whole story and you finish it, and then you submit it, and then it might get published and you get to work with an editor, and you have a publishing credit and you've worked with an editor, and like suddenly you're learning all this stuff that with a novel takes 10 years to learn.
Exactly.
Or with flash fiction it takes like maybe a month. So that's part of why I really, really love it. That, and I just have and written for more than just Splickety with my flash and with some short fiction, and have won some awards for that. But Southern Writers Magazine, 2015 and 2017.
That's right. Yes. I remember now. Yep.
And so, but I do. People look at my writing now, like they look at excerpts for I had a couple of agents who were looking at my new stuff, and they tell me, what a strong writer I am. And I do really owe a lot of that to flash fiction, because that's where I learned to write with an active voice. And that's where I really learned to distill down what I was saying, rather than having these pages and pages and pages of family fun history, just because I thought it was so interesting. I learned how to say it a little more specifically. And so, but Splickety, you can go to Splickety.com and you can subscribe for free. And there are 3 magazines. They'll come to you digitally and you can read them on your Kindle. Spark is my favorite because it is the romance magazine.
The romance.
And it's so fun. And if you subscribe now, you get August's issue of Spark for free. And hey, staff feature. And so, but Spark's the romance magazine. Havoc is the speculative fiction, and Splickety is really known for its speculative fiction. There's a lot of people on staff who write that, so it's kind of a big draw for that crowd of people who enjoy making up their own world. Yeah, and not Lindsey, clearly.
But not me either.
Yeah, and I was like, listen, if I write about the beach, we can go to the beach.
Right.
And so, and then Splickety magazine is like the flagship, the original, and it's actually transitioning to YA in 2018. So it'll be a YA.
Oh, is it?
YA stories and kind of that general fiction.
Sure.
Yeah, but Splickety's fun. It's great. Lots and lots of well-known writers write for us. Diane Mills writes for us on a regular. She's a regular contributor.
Oh, nice.
And so lots of great writers are participating. It's fun. It's a good exercise. It's a great way to explore a story idea. It's a great way to practice a different voice. It's a great way to practice a different genre. Like I never thought I was a romance writer until I started writing short fiction romance. Right. And so that really
Wow.
helped enhance what I was doing.
That is so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's
All
fun.
right. Well, this has just been so much fun. Again, Lindsey Brackett, debut novel is Still Waters. Romantic Times gave it 4 stars, which is always great. They don't give out their stars liberally, so it's really means a lot to get that from them. Called it a brilliant debut, and it truly is. It's just a wonderful story. One last question. When you get all done writing, everything's done, how do you unwind?
I like to read, obviously.
Obviously.
So I always have a book or 2 or 3 going at any one time. I went to ACFW last night and bought Sarah Loudon Thomas's the one about Miracle in Dry Season. That's the name of it. I've wanted it for 2 years because I think the cover is so beautiful. So I finally bought it last night.
I think I've read that recently. Yeah.
It's Appalachian fiction.
Yes.
So I started reading that last night, but that's really reading is really my truest unwind. When I was launching the book a couple of weeks ago, I started reading a Mitford book. Mitford is like my go-to kind of thing. Like I can and I haven't read them all, so I'm reading them still in order. I just finished book 5, and I had never read them until last fall. I directed Welcome to Mitford for the community theater, so I felt like I've
never read them either. I know that they're such a classic and a staple. It's like you're supposed to read them.
It's so comforting. Like I feel like I can just pick it up at any time, and they're so character driven that I mean, it's okay if I set it down for a little while and then come back to it. Like I always want to come back to it. I don't ever not want to come back to it, but Mitford is very comforting to me, probably because I love, small towns.
Small towns, there you go.
There you go. So I read, and occasionally we Netflix binge. So
that's fun too. Yeah. You did mention too before we do sign off, you can visit Lindsey on her website. It's Lindsey LINDSEY P Brackett BRACKETT.com. Also, you want to follow Lindsey's Facebook page or profile, both, either?
My author page, really.
The author page, and she's going to be doing some Facebook Live events, so by the time you're watching this, she may have already done some of those, so we want to make sure that you have a chance to see Lindsey's videos on Facebook too.
Edisto Island Live.
What is it?
After the hurricane.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That was no fun.
Not for anyone.
No. All right, Lindsey, thank you so much for being here today. This has been so much fun. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me, Johnnie. It's been great.
It has been great. And everybody else, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. This is Novelists Unwind with Johnnie Alexander. Bye-bye.